When I first started making videos, it was all instinct. There were no strategies, no thumbnails, no brand deals, no grand plan. Just an idea, a spark, and an obsession I couldn't turn off. I wasn't thinking about views, subscribers, or money. I was thinking about how I could take this raw idea in my head and turn it into something real, something that existed in the world, something I could hit play on and say, I made that. That's what fueled me in the beginning. And it's what still fuels me even now. You have to understand the early days were brutal. There was no audience, no likes, no comments. The only feedback I got was from silence. I'd spend hours, sometimes days, working on a video. I'd edit until my eyes burned. I'd re-record takes 20, 30, even 40 times. I'd sit alone, listening to my own voice over and over again, just to make sure the pacing felt right, or the joke landed, or the story had flow. And then I'd upload it to the world, and nothing would happen, sometimes 10 views, sometimes 2, and yeah, maybe one of those was my mom, and the other one was me checking if it worked on mobile. But I didn't care. I wasn't chasing numbers, I was chasing improvement. I was chasing the feeling of progress. The feeling that the thing I posted today was even slightly better than the one I made last week. That was my scoreboard. I was obsessed with learning how to get better, faster, sharper. I'd study the biggest creators, pause their videos every few seconds, reverse, engineer their editing rhythms, figure out why their intros worked and mine didn't. I'd break down their pacing, analyze their cuts, time their jokes. I turned watching content into homework, into fuel. When you're operating like that, when your motivation doesn't come from applause, but from within, you develop a kind of unstoppable energy. There were nights I didn't sleep, not because I had to pull an all-nighter, but because I didn't want to stop. I'd look up and it'd be 4 a.m. My keyboard covered in crumbs, the glow of the screen lighting up my face, and I'd still be tweaking a single frame transition or experimenting with a new sound effect. I didn't feel tired. I felt alive. It was like every cell in my body wanted to keep going, and that's the piece people miss. Everyone sees the big moments, the crazy stunts, the viral explosions, but those moments are built on thousands of hours no one ever sees. The late nights, the failures, the projects that never made it past the editing timeline, the ideas that sounded amazing in my head and fell completely flat in real life. But here's the key. I was in love with those moments too. The grind, the process, the messy middle where nothing's polished and everything feels just a little out of reach. That's where the magic actually happens. I remember the first time I made something that felt like it clicked. It wasn't a viral hit, it didn't blow up, but I knew I could feel it. The pacing worked, the idea was clearer, the storytelling had rhythm. It didn't matter that no one watched it, I watched it, and I knew it was a step forward. And that made me hungrier. I wasn't trying to win a popularity contest. I was trying to build something I could be proud of, something that would outlast me. The world has a weird way of validating people only after they succeed. Once the views come, people want to know your process. Once the money hits, they assume you were always some kind of genius. But when you're in the beginning, when you've posted 10 videos and no one cares you're invisible, you're ignored, and that's the exact moment most people quit. Not because they don't have potential, but because they were chasing external validation instead of internal obsession. If I had waited for an audience to motivate me, I never would have made it past my first month. It's easy to talk about consistency, it's hard to live it, it's hard to post when the numbers are zero, it's hard to stay excited when no one's watching, but that's where real creators are forged, in silence. In obscurity, in the nights where the only person who believes in the video is you. If you can fall in love with those nights, you'll never run out of energy, because the work becomes the reward, the creation itself becomes the motivation. Even now, after everything, I still carry that same fire, that same obsession, that same itch to make something that didn't exist yesterday, and the truth is, even if it all disappeared tomorrow, even if every subscriber vanished and every algorithm stopped working, I'd still be here. Still building, still experimenting, still hitting record, not because someone asked me to, but because I can't imagine not doing it. That's how I know it's real. That's how I know it's mine. This isn't just about content. It's about purpose, about finding something that makes you forget to check the clock. Something that pulls you out of bed in the morning before the alarm. Something that lives so deep in your DNA that you do it for free, forever. That's the zone where greatness begins, not with applause, not with money, not with external pressure, but with passion so loud that it drowns out the silence. And I'll be honest, it wasn't always easy. There were days when doubt crept in. Days where I wondered if I was wasting my time. When the upload button felt more like a question than a statement. But every time that happened, I'd go back to the core. Why did I start this? Why am I doing this? And the answer was always the same: because I love it. Because creating gives me life. Because nothing else has ever made me feel this focused, this hungry, this dialed in. People ask me all the time, what kept you going when no one was watching? And my answer is simple: I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me, for the version of me that couldn't sleep until it was right. For the version of me that was excited just to try something weird and see if it worked. For the kid inside me who thought, what if this actually turns into something? And then decided to find out. That mindset is everything. If you need the world to cheer you on to start, you'll never finish. But if you can cheer for yourself, if you can look at your own work and say, I'm not there yet, but I'm better than I was, then you'll keep going. You'll keep showing up even when the room is empty. You'll keep uploading even when the numbers don't move. And eventually, you'll look up and realize you've built something the world can't ignore. But even if it never happens, even if the spotlight never comes, the work still matters. The growth still matters. The creativity still matters, because you're building something far more important than views. You're building yourself. Your discipline, your taste, your instincts, your skill set, that's the real success story. Not the one the algorithm gives you, but the one you earn through repetition and resilience. So if you're creating right now and no one's watching, good. That means you're free, free to experiment, free to suck, free to learn without pressure. Use that time. Fall in love with the craft. Get weird. Get obsessed. Make the video you want to see, even if no one else understands it yet. Because if you keep showing up day after day, improvement is inevitable. And if you can stay in love with the process, if you can stay passionate even in the absence of praise, then you're already winning. Because real creators don't wait to be seen. They build until they can't be ignored. They create because they must, because something inside them won't let them stop. And that's exactly why, even if every view disappeared, even if every platform vanished, even if no one ever saw another frame of mine again, I'd still be making videos. Because I was never chasing fame. I was chasing mastery, and the journey, that was always the reward. Eventually, something starts to shift. After all the late nights, the trial and error, the uploads that barely made a ripple, there's a moment. A moment where the thing you're making begins to connect. It might be small, a comment from someone who really gets it, a handful of views that come from someone other than your mom, a message from someone who says, hey, that was really good. And that moment doesn't just feel like validation. It feels like fuel. You realize the spark you've been carrying inside you might finally be catching fire. But even then, it doesn't explode, not right away. There's this slow, almost invisible build-up. You're still working in silence, but you start to hear whispers. Still editing alone, but now there's a sense that someone might actually care what you make next. That's a dangerous moment. Not because of the attention, but because it tests your reason. Are you still doing it for the love of it, or are you now just performing for others? When that first trickle of recognition shows up, your focus has to get sharper, not softer. Your obsession with getting better can't fade just because you're no longer invisible. I had to wrestle with that shift. When the numbers started moving, it would have been easy to chase the metrics instead of the mission, to follow trends instead of instincts, but I kept reminding myself, I didn't start this for the likes. I started because I couldn't not create, and so I kept doing what I always did, pushing limits, coming up with the most ridiculous ideas I could imagine and figuring out how to make them real, testing things no one had tried yet, putting more into one video than most would spread across 10. I treated each one like a challenge to myself. How far can I take this? How much more effort can I pour into it? How can I make this so undeniably entertaining that even if someone has never heard of me, they're hooked within 5 seconds, and I wasn't afraid to go all in? That's one of the biggest things I've learned. Most people stop too early. They stop when they get tired, not when the idea is finished. But the difference between good and great is the last 10% that no one sees, the polish, the extra layer, the idea within the idea. That's what separates the people who go viral once from the people who build something that lasts. So when I started to see those tiny signals of growth, I didn't slow down. I turned the dial all the way up. People think making videos is just about hitting record and uploading, but if you really care, if you're in this to create something unforgettable, it's a full-time obsession. I was watching every frame, every second, every reaction. I'd run test edits just to see where attention dropped off. I'd sit with a piece of content for hours trying to figure out what would make someone stay 5 seconds longer. I was ruthless with the work, not because I wanted to impress people, but because I wanted to honor the idea. If I had a vision, I wasn't going to let laziness be the reason it didn't land. That's where the real momentum comes from. Not one lucky break, but a mountain of preparation colliding with a moment of opportunity. When you finally do start getting attention, the only reason it matters is because you've trained for it. You've spent hundreds, maybe thousands of hours honing the skill, building the endurance, mastering the craft. And now, when the spotlight hits, you're not just ready. You're already performing like someone who belongs there. Still, every step forward brought new challenges. Growth adds pressure. More eyes mean more opinions. More success means more people waiting to see you mess up. But you know what made that bearable? The fact that I was never in it for the applause to begin with. I didn't build a career on people watching. I built it on not being able to stop, even when no one was. That foundation, doing the work for the love of it, kept me grounded when the stakes got higher. There were moments where I doubted myself, sure. Moments where I thought maybe I'd finally hit my ceiling, but I'd remember the beginning, the silence, the grind, the videos with zero feedback. And I'd realize something. If I survived all that with no attention, no reward, just pure passion, then no challenge that comes with success can stop me either, because I wasn't built by praise, I was built by obsession. That's why I always tell people, don't wait until you have an audience to act like a professional. Don't wait for permission to take yourself seriously. From day one, I treated my work like it mattered, like it was worth mastering. I wasn't making videos hoping people would care. I was making videos knowing that I cared. That mindset is what carried me. That's what turned practice into progress. And when the world finally started to notice, I didn't have to become someone else. I just had to keep doing what I was already doing, but louder. People think success changes you, but I think it reveals you. If you're in it for the hype, that'll show. If you're in it for the craft, that'll shine too. And for me, every step up the ladder just reinforced what I already believed. This isn't about chasing fame. It's about chasing impact, about asking yourself, what can I create that leaves people speechless? And not for ego, but for the thrill of building something bold enough to matter. There's a huge difference between playing to win and playing not to lose. Once you start gaining traction, it's tempting to play safe, to stick to what works, to repeat yourself, but I never wanted to play defense. I didn't want to maintain, I wanted to explode, so I kept reinventing, kept pushing, kept asking, what's the next crazy thing I can do that no one else has thought of yet? And yeah, not everything worked. Some ideas flopped. Some took months of planning and went nowhere, but that was fine, because the point wasn't perfection. It was growth. That's another thing most people misunderstand. They think if something doesn't immediately work, it was a waste. But that's not true. Every failure taught me something. Every flop was data. Every time I took a risk and it didn't land, I learned a new way to think, to build, to adapt. You don't grow by avoiding mistakes. You grow by making better ones, smarter ones, ones that teach you how to think like a visionary instead of just a content machine. The beauty of this whole journey is that every phase matters. The obscurity taught me patience. The silence taught me resilience. The grind taught me discipline. And the attention just made me louder, not different, just amplified. If you build your identity on the love of the process, you won't have to reinvent yourself when success arrives. You'll just have more tools, more resources, more leverage to execute the vision you were already chasing in the dark. I think that's why I never burned out, even when the workload tripled, even when the expectations soared. I wasn't chasing a finish line, I was living in the work. I wasn't trying to escape it, I was trying to dive deeper into it. People who create for clout get tired fast. People who create because they are obsessed. They're unstoppable. They can take the hits, weather the dips, and still show up with the same fire they had when no one knew their name. And honestly, I think that's what separates the good from the great. Greatness isn't about one big idea. It's about endurance. It's about consistency. It's about showing up every day even when it's not exciting, even when the hype fades, even when you're the only one clapping for yourself. Because you don't need an audience to believe in your work. You just need a reason strong enough to keep you moving forward when logic says stop. That's why I still say, if everyone vanished tomorrow, if the platforms disappeared, if the views dropped to zero, if the attention went somewhere else, I'd still be here. Still sketching out ideas, still writing scripts. Still editing footage, not because someone asked me to, but because something inside me refuses to stop. Because this isn't just what I do, it's who I am. So whether I'm making something for 10 million people or 10, the mindset stays the same. Make it unforgettable. Make it obsessive. Make it better than anything you've done before, because the real reward isn't in the reaction. It's in the creation, and that's the truth that carries me, whether the spotlight is on or off. I'm not here for the moment, I'm here for the mission, and that mission doesn't end when the cameras stop rolling. It begins there. Success isn't what made me start, and it's not what keeps me going. I didn't begin this journey because I wanted followers, fame, or fortune. I started because I had something inside me that needed to be built, created, expressed. Something so relentless it didn't care whether anyone saw it. It just needed to exist. And that's the part people miss. The views, the subscribers, the applause, they're not the fuel, they're just the echo. The real power comes from the passion that was there long before anyone cared, and will still be burning long after the lights go out. I'd still be here, pushing myself, dreaming bigger, building something crazy, not because the world demands it, but because I do, and that's the difference. That's the foundation that never cracks. If your motivation is external, it'll fade. But if it's internal, if it's obsession, discipline, and purpose, then nothing can stop you. Not rejection, not failure, not silence. So if you're chasing something, do it like no one's watching, because that's when you're your most fearless. That's when you're the most dangerous. That's when you're building something real. And one day, if the world finally tunes in, they won't be meeting someone who wants to succeed. They'll be meeting someone who already earned it in the dark.